Shoot first and ask questions later? You might want to take aim at these upcoming FPS games before spraying and praying. Did you know the FPS genre used to be called Doom clones? Well, there's a lot more than just Doom now. But could you actually make it to the end of these first-person shooters? Let's find out, and welcome to what's down the sights in 2024. Kicking things off, it's The Front. Here we have a survival open-world crafting shooter game. Players will assume the role of a resistance fighter sent back in time to stop the rise of a tyrannical empire that has conquered the world, using technology based on unknown relics. This game is a little bit different than your typical first-person shooter because it does have quite a bit of base building, crafting, a little bit of resource collection, but generally, the reason why I'm not putting this in my survival list is because the main focus of the game is first-person shooter. And as you can see, it's not quite your typical survival game. There's a lot of shooting elements here in this vibrant open world. You'll be fighting to survive the elements, fighting off beasts and enemy attacks. Building your base isn't just for survival, but also you can set up traps and turrets for defense, sensor lights, and all of that to stop things from showing up and killing you. You'll be able to augment weapons and vehicles, customizing them to how you see fit, and you'll be able to shoot your way through situations how you like, with a sniper rifle, frenetic vehicular combat, or just going in guns blazing. Overall, The Front looks like a very promising first-person shooter game with some other elements added to it, and it went through a beta test, so they got quite a bit of feedback in 2023, and although they don't have a specific release window right now, they will be releasing into early access, looking at about a year's development in early access. So The Front should be releasing in some form over the next year, and then another year for final release. For a shooter game with some fantastical mechanistry, it's Clockwork Revolution. Embark on a grand adventure in the steampunk metropolis of Avalon, wielding an incredible invention that allows you to travel into the past and influence key events, altering the course of history. That's a pretty interesting premise. Basically, it's calling itself a time-bending steampunk first-person RPG shooter kind of game. So there's quite a bit here, and the theme alone I know is going to attract a lot of people. Now, this is being developed by InXile Entertainment, a developer that has a pretty good reputation. And from the looks of things, you don't just control the past, you control the future through your actions, so the world and city, well, the city you're going through, can change significantly based on your choices. You'll also be shooting up various clockwork automatons, which is always fun. I mean, it overall looks great and seems very exciting. However, there's no particular release window right now, and they are saying that it is coming in due time. So they'll work on this game moving forward, and I do expect to see a lot more of Clockwork Revolution going through 2024. Forgive Me Father 2. Embark on a journey into the darkest nightmares to restore your sanity. Blast your way through hordes of possessed enemies, unlock an arsenal of deadly weapons, and get ready to face even more Lovecraftian madness in this action-packed FPS sequel. This one looks really interesting, mainly because of the Lovecraftian theme and the distinctive dark comic-like visuals. You'll dive into the madness with a wide range of weapons, fight a host of diverse formidable enemies, and beware, each of them evolves into different, ever more evil, twisted forms of themselves. Gear up and fight, and try to survive with the dynamic madness system that you're gonna have to manage. Overall, this one looks really unique, really good. It just looks different, and the art style itself is just so, it just feels so right. And this is a sequel to Forgive Me Father, which was pretty well received, so moving forward, we can expect Forgive Me Father 2 to just amp up the game. Bringing the magic, it's Witchfire. Armed with strange weapons and forbidden pagan magic, you hunt down a powerful witch holding the key to your salvation. Witchfire is a dark fantasy roguelite shooter from the creators of Painkiller, Bulletstorm, and The Vanishing of Ethan Carter. So this is coming from experienced developers, and I mean, just watching the trailer, it looks really good. It looks like a witch-based version of Doom kind of approach. I mean, visually it's fantastic. And gameplay and premise-wise, it seems really nice. It is in early access, however, I do have to say right now, on the Epic Games Store. So I know there are a lot of people who don't want to jump onto the Epic Games Store, but you wouldn't have to worry. Over the years, I've seen pretty much every Epic Games Store exclusive come to Steam and other platforms later on. This is likely doing the 1 year in early access on the Epic Games Store and then will release everywhere else. But if you do want to jump into it right now, well, it's in early access, which means we can see a lot about it. Dark fantasy with guns, always fun, a war with witches, sounds like a good time, and a grim dark world to explore. Considering these developers made The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, there should be quite a good amount of environmental storytelling despite this being a first-person shooter. A lot of promise, and we'll see how Witchfire does going through early access. Going to a dark space, it's Luna Abyss. Here we have a single-player, story-driven action-adventure with fluid platforming and bullet hell combat. Follow the journey of Forks, a prisoner of Luna caught between a cryptic prophecy and their prison sentence. I mean, this one looks sci-fi and pretty crazy with horror elements. And it seems like you're caught between escaping the abyss or going further down into it to uncover mysteries in the depths. So this one is a first-person shooter, as I mentioned. It's a bullet hell game, so expect just an insane level of projectiles flying right at you. And first-person bullet hell games can be very fun, but it is a specific flavor of first-person shooter. You might not quite be into the bullet hell experience, but it does look pretty good so far. The full release date has not been revealed. Good news, there is a free demo on Steam for Luna Abyss. So, you can just have a look at it, you can give it a try, see what you think. If you're not too sure about the whole bullet hell aspect, then, well, now's a good time to try it out because there is a free demo. Perfect. And I'm sure they're collecting a lot of feedback from that free demo, so you can tell the developers what you think, and we'll see if they take that on board going through 2024. Hey, now that you're a bit into the list, I'm sure you're enjoying it, so it'd be greatly appreciated if you can like the video. Alright, next game. Vampire Hunters. To hunt vampires, you'll need guns. Lots of guns. In this game, you mow down vampires, demons, and more by stacking your guns into absurd, impossibly awesome builds. Test your firepower in this roguelite retro FPS where steampunk meets the undead, all in the effort to become the baddest vampire hunter in Transylvania. Now, what stands out to me first with this game, outside of the crazy gun stacking, is that it's got that mid-poly aesthetic, which I know some of you don't like, but I personally love this mid-poly aesthetic. They used it on the System Shock remake where they keep the pixely aesthetic, but it's not low poly and it's not like low res. It's like an intentional middle poly, middle resolution kind of visual style. And personally, I just love it. I think it's the best of both worlds, but I know it's not to everyone's tastes. Now, this particular game, Vampire Hunters, is in early access with few but positive reviews, 80+% at the time of recording. And the idea of stacking these guns to become just more and more guns all at once, like who needs holsters when you can just hold every gun all the time? And it sort of has that retro vibe. I remember some old shooter games where you didn't really have multiple guns to choose from. You just collected more shooting power-ups and you basically shot more and more as you built up those power-ups. This is sort of like that, but in first-person shooter form. And the guns are very varied. You can collect everything from a classic revolver to a high-pressured holy water hose, and upgrade your guns to just super powerful levels. You might also be able to tell that it is a corridor shooter, which means you just constantly move down these hallways and areas, shooting endless waves of monsters and demons and beasts. So this is a more classic approach to first-person shooters, not just in visual style, but also in gameplay. So it's kind of a throwback throwback, and it looks like an interesting take. You can check it out in early access. They say they only want to be in early access for 4 months, which is a very short amount of time in early access, and I usually don't see games only take 4 months. So although the initial release window is supposed to be by the end of 2023, I'm just going to predict there'll be an early access into 2024. I might be wrong, but I'm just gonna expect that at this time. But you can jump into Vampire Hunters whenever you want, if you want. Picking up the pace, Battle Shapers. This one is promising to be a blazing fast sci-fi FPS roguelite where you shoot and smash your way through swarms of corrupt robots, wield powerful weapons, abilities, and game-changing new powers stolen from ruthless overlords. I mean, at first glance, it's colorful, it's fast, it's got tons of robots to shoot and destroy, and generally looks like a good time. Not all first-person shooters are about speed, but this one is leaning hard into that aspect. And honestly, it kind of looks like a colorful sci-fi Doom kind of thing, with how the enemies and levels are set up. Lots of jumping, lots of punching. And it could be an interesting take. Now, Battle Shapers is going into early access soon, aiming for a full release in 2024. So we'll be getting a much better look at this game over the coming months, and depending on how it goes through early access, they should be able to stick to their release schedule. But only if Battle Shapers actually does hit the ground running, as they're aiming to do. Now, going even more retro in even more ways, it's Beyond Sunset, a cyberpunk first-person shooter with a rich story and RPG elements. You are Lucy, an enhanced street samurai searching for lost memories. Fight in large, open, interactive levels overtaken by yakuza, zombies, robots, and bosses. And as I mentioned earlier, here's another middle poly aesthetic, which, again, I have to say I personally like. I understand if you don't, though. But this one is retro and nostalgic in not just the middle poly aspect, but its whole 80s cyberpunk aesthetic as well, which just, I don't know, it just hits the right notes for me. Like, I just really love it. Now, this game is all about gun jutsu. You can upgrade a selection of distinct weapons, you outmaneuver your foes using dashes and slides, and you unlock abilities in vertical combat scenarios. And you can see there's a lot of jumping and a lot of platforms, all of that. Though there are also RPG aspects, but mainly in the gameplay elements where you can level up and upgrade, you explore large open levels full of NPCs, and discovering challenges and playstyles as you go through. And don't forget the big boss battles, it's always good. One big promise is that it is 100% moddable. It says you can create new levels with GZ Doom tools, so this is tapping into the Doom modding community, which is a very interesting approach and might be, like, if it really does get into the Doom modding community and gets that community into this game, that could sort of piggyback itself to becoming something very special. But I'm not quite sure if they're going to be able to do that. That's a hard thing to do. You can't just get another game's modding community on board with your game so easily, but maybe they'll do it. The game will be releasing into early access towards the end of 2023 for a full release sometime towards the middle of 2024. Again, good news, there's a free demo on Steam at the time of recording, so you can just check out Beyond Sunset for free and see if you like it. And if you're part of the GZ Doom modding community, then you let me know whether you're actually into modding this game or not. Going a bit further back into time, it's United 1944. Here we have a game that wants to be an innovative World War II shooter. Now, there's a lot of games that want to be an innovative World War II shooter, so we'll see how this one goes. Combining weapon crafting, base building, and team strategy, you'll be fighting for territory in 16 versus 16 urban guerrilla battles in domination mode, or you can explore a city in ruins as a lone wolf in survivor mode. You unlock skills, customize your hero, and play your way to make history in this World War II shooter. So it does seem like there's this new trend of adding scavenging, crafting, building, and defending into first-person shooter games. Or is it more like they're adding shooting games into survival games? Anyway, there seems to be this trend of blending survival games and first-person shooters, which makes my job very difficult, but I'm gonna stick to United 1944 being an FPS game primarily. And it's a team game, not a hero-based one, but 16 versus 16 can be quite fun. It's large enough to have some scale, but not too large. But of course, as mentioned, you can always go it alone if you really want to. It plans to release with 2 large maps as battlefields, a boot camp and shooting range to practice your skills, team hierarchy with squad leaders and squad comms, in-session skill trees with 40 plus skills to choose mid-battle, so that means you're leveling up in a specific game, not necessarily outside the game, so you level up as you play through a round, 16 iconic weapons from World War II with more on the way, solid weapon models, damage fall-off, ballistic projectiles, recoil and spread and all that good stuff, along with dynamic day-night cycles. And the freeform building of walls, doors and barricades can make things interesting, or maybe it's just muddying the experience. It's hard to tell. I'm personally very interested just to see how this first-person shooter with survival game elements works out, because we haven't really seen too many games take this approach, and now that it seems to be a trend, we're getting quite a few of them. And it could be the future of first-person shooters, or maybe not. The interesting thing about this list is that you can see games going in every direction, and it's hard to pinpoint what the next big shooter is. If you think you know, let me know. For an indie FPS, Out of Action. This one is an action-heavy multiplayer plus single-player FPS set in a brutal cyberpunk universe. As you can see, there's fluid movement and dynamic combat maneuvers. Advanced multiplayer bullet time is an interesting feature. A substantial selection of weapons, attachments, augments, and devices, deep loadout customization, gore and dismemberment, a dark 90s anime aesthetic, and you can play in multiple solo and team-based game modes in this dystopian cyberpunk environment. Generally, this does look like a fast-paced shooter, which has a lot of competitive elements in these sort of building arenas, and could be a nice little cool addition to the first-person shooter genre. Now, it has to be said that this is more of an indie development, but for an indie development, it looks pretty polished already from the trailers. It is aiming for a Q4 2024 release though, which means we'll probably get it within the next year. There is of course a big chance that this gets delayed into 2025. But either way, we can keep an eye on the action in Out of Action. Next up, we've got Kvark, an FPS game set in a fictional version of the 80s Czech Republic. You find yourself in an underground facility that is falling apart, and as you travel through it, you have to navigate through dark tunnels and encounter many obstacles and enemies that will test your skills. At a glance, this feels like an 80s themed Half-Life kind of thing, where, you know, the scientific facility is falling apart and then suddenly everything's trying to kill you. And it might be an interesting twist, which then sort of feels nostalgic in some ways, but also unique in some ways. You can also tell another visual trend is continuing here. It's the mid-poly art style, which, you know what I think. And it does seem like nostalgia is a big selling point for many of these first-person shooter games in one way or another. Gameplay-wise, this one does seem like a more classic approach, like a corridor shooter, going through area to area, killing enemies, picking up items, unlocking doors. And the game is already in early access with only a handful of reviews, but so far they are 90+% positive. So Kvark is not so much hitting the ground running, but it's put a good foot forward. And they're planning to be in early access for up to 12 months, which means a middle 2024 full release window if they stick to their original scheduling, which they might not. It probably will go longer than that, but Kvark does seem to have interesting promise. Now, we can't have a first-person shooter category without zombies appearing at some point. So here we have Sker Ritual. This is a round-based co-op survival first-person shooter and a spin-off to the British horror Maid of Sker. You play solo or up to 4 players to survive the supernatural onslaught of the Quiet Ones. So you get to jump in with team tactics, or you can shoot solo as you go through fighting the horrific undead, facing elite boss enemies, collecting miracles, quips, and more, and supercharged weapons for just a bit more firepower. Now it has to be said that this game has been in early access for a while, since the end of 2022, so we're approaching 1 year in early access at the moment, but it's gotten hundreds of reviews, and they're mostly positive. Closer to 80%. Having said that, they originally aimed to leave early access in Q1 of 2023, which, if you check your clocks, it's way past that. So, although this game, Sker Ritual, has had a good start, looks interesting, seems to be delivering what people want, early access is taking way longer than initially anticipated, so I expect it to continue to go through development into 2024. I don't think they're releasing anytime soon, but what they've added in so far people are liking, and, you know, that's not a bad thing. They can take their time and just make a better and better game. Hopefully it does have some kind of full release in 2024, but, you know, we'll see how that goes. Next up, a shooter game which we haven't really seen too much of, and it doesn't even have a Steam listing quite yet. It's called Pioner? It's like Pioneer with only one E. It's a first-person action MMORPG where your main task is survival and exploration of a dangerous PvE and PvP world. Now, the trailer looks amazing, but I'm not 100% convinced that this is all actual raw gameplay, because, well, I just generally am suspicious of trailers that look too good. The world of this game is being distorted, and you have to adapt to it. Events, factions, and tasks will be part of your role as a mercenary, bandit, caravan guard, explorer, pioneer, or more, and you become a full-fledged participant in a variety of events throughout the archipelago in this game, exploring anomalies, confronting hunters from other factions, and carrying out special tasks. Don't forget the horrific monsters that are all around, which could kill you, or just other players. And overall, I mean, from what we've seen, it looks great, it looks awesome, but I would be cautious about this game because, you know, we haven't really seen too much. If this game does deliver what it's promising, this could be really, really cool, but it is also mainly multiplayer game, so it does also depend on there being a large enough player base to keep this interesting, because otherwise, whenever you set up an MMO game and then the player base dies out, and then it just sort of defeats the whole purpose. We've seen plenty of MMOs come and go over the years, and this is another one on the horizon, so could be cool, could be not. Moving on to a game from Devolver Digital, Angerfoot, a lightning-fast action FPS where the only things harder than your kicking feet are the kicking beats. This one is another fast-paced first-person shooter game, which is just colorful and crazy, and, you know, it is always nice to see that so many games are not just... I mean, remember the time when every first-person shooter was a dark, muddy, bloomy brown World War shooter? And then those sort of passed, and then it was sort of a weird time for first-person shooters, but they were always kind of modern military. And now it seems like shooter games have just gone way out, and now they're just doing crazy stuff in every direction, and maybe not all of them will succeed, but I think some of them will, and some of them seem very confident in the direction they're taking, which is nice to see. Angerfoot itself is, well, what you expect, a fast-paced, kicking, action, punching, kicking, lots of foot stuff kind of game. And although it's set for a 2024 release date, it has a free demo on Steam right now, so go check it out. It looks like a lot of fun. Maybe not quite for everyone, but free demo always makes making decisions easy, and it's easy to promote free demos because no one has to pay any money. So go have a closer look at Angerfoot and see if you're into these feet. Is that right? For another fast-paced, sliding, jumping shooter, it's Robobeat. keep your trigger finger on the pulse. In this rhythm shooter, you play as Ace, a bounty hunter on a mission to capture robot gone rogue Frazer in his ever-shifting lair. You wall run, slide, and shoot to the beat as you blast through robot armies and track down your target. Now, a rhythm-based first-person shooter does set this one apart. Not many first-person shooters go rhythm-based, and that alone, I think, would be interesting to try. I mean, from what I've heard from more experienced first-person shooter players, is that it generally is rhythm-based anyway, because, you know, guns only shoot so fast, reload times take certain times, movement and all of that. The enemies are shooting at certain paces. So generally, experienced first-person shooters treat every first-person shooter as a rhythm game, but this one is leaning into it. And it's a roguelite kind of experience, which, I don't know, it feels right for this kind of game. Interestingly, you can actually pick the music, so you can swap out cassette tapes. Oh, remember those? You swap out cassette tapes and you shoot to the beat as you make your enemies face the music. Now, if you're able to keep to the beat, this could be a really fun game. If you're not quite good with keeping time, well, maybe less so, but Robobeat, it's a different one, and it's aiming for a 2024 release. Moving on, we've got Road to Vostok, a hardcore single-player survival game set in a post-apocalyptic border zone between Finland and Russia. You survive, loot, plan, and prepare your way across the border zone and enter the Vostok. So, although this does have survival game elements, I'm putting it as first-person shooter because that does still seem to be the main focus of the game. You know, there's realistic weapon mechanics, hostile NPCs, and tactical weapon handling. There's also going to be looting, trading, various dynamic events, finding maps to real-world locations, shelters as safe zones, and Vostok itself is a dangerous and mysterious zone, which is treated as a permadeath zone. So this game, one of the main selling points of Road to Vostok is it's supposed to be hardcore and difficult. So this one is not for the light of heart. And I think that should be stressed. It is one of those difficult to succeed survival first-person shooters. It will be releasing into early access, but no specific date for when that will be starting quite yet. It has been going through public demos though, so they should have a good amount of feedback to make this game good already. The good news is that there is a free demo that you can just download off the Steam page at the time of recording. So go have a look at Road to Vostok if you're more into that realistic, hardcore survival FPS. But I think if you're looking for something a bit more fast-paced, this one might feel like a bit of a grind. But realism-wise, this one seems pretty good. And then we have Red Sunrise. Here is a shooter that talks about military conflicts in different parts of the world. You take on the role of a mercenary, and you'll have to perform various combat missions of private military companies and government agencies in hotspots around the world. This one is team-based, realistic, and also is aiming to be hardcore, so these hotspots are not a walk in the park. Now, at the moment, we don't know too much about Red Sunrise. The trailer looks decent, and there's a lot of nice screenshots, though it doesn't quite look like raw gameplay at the moment. Maybe it is. But also, the Steam page is not exactly promising a lot of features at the time of recording, and also, release window is just coming soon, with no particular details of that either. From the trailer, it does look like there's a lot of customization of your gun, and very detailed worlds and areas to shoot your way through. But I think, at the end of the day, we're just gonna have to see what Red Sunrise has on the horizon as we go through 2024. Going back to another war, we've got Burning Lands, a tactical multiplayer first-person shooter set in the Vietnam War era. Now, this game says it's promising to be an accessible tactical simulation, which these developers are coining apparently as ATS, intending to strike the best possible balance between realism and accessibility. I mean, that's a big promise and a big task to take on. Because quite often, realistic games become way too hardcore, and then people, like, it's only for, like, the top percent of first-person shooter players, and a lot of people don't get into it. So they're trying to be realistic without making it overly hardcore, and maybe they can pull it off. In this game, each team has up to 60 players segmented into squads, which can further specialize towards infantry, logistics, or armor. And each team has a commander, which is responsible for coordinating squads towards team objectives in a combined arms warfare. I mean, I've not played too many Vietnam first-person shooters, but this one is giving me Battlefield Vietnam vibes. I played quite a bit of that one, and I remember having quite a lot of fun. So Burning Lands might be a modern take on that, and we'll see if it's possible that they'll actually pull off this accessible tactical simulation approach. There's no particular release window at the moment, but they will be releasing into early access with about a year in early access. So this is looking at least at a 2024 full release, but perhaps a 2025 full release. But we should be able to play this sometime in 2024. Now, speaking of realism, there's this game called Unrecord. This is supposed to be a single-player first-person shooter that tells the story of a tactical police officer from the perspective of his body camera. As you work to solve a complex case, you'll need to use your tactical and detective skills to succeed. Now, a lot of people are talking about this game, and not just this game, but this particular game, because of how realistic it looks. And it's hard to tell if this is actually real, actual gameplay. I mean, it is animated, it is graphics, and perhaps the body cam first person sort of look around is making it seem more realistic. But I don't know, like, is this too realistic? Like, it's like surpassing the uncanny valley, and I mean, it's a different approach. I'm just a little skeptical of how real this gameplay is. I mean, are we really approaching that level of graphics already? A bit sooner than I expected, but okay. Unrecord is a VR first-person shooter, and it looks like it could be really interesting. I just don't want to get too much into it right now until I'm actually sure that this is a real game. It might be. Let's see what they actually deliver on release day. Now, being adjacent to the last game, it's Bodycam. It's pretty much the same idea as the last game. It's an ultra-realistic first-person shooter, but this one is multiplayer, but also using this Bodycam perspective and just super realistic visuals, which, again, I will be skeptical of until we actually see the game release and be actual gameplay. Now, this one is a team game instead of being solo. It's PvP and team deathmatch and all of that good stuff from like this body cam perspective. And I don't know why there's this sudden interest in making body cam first-person shooters in ultra-realistic environments, but well, we can compare Unrecord and body cam, and you know what? I'm just gonna see what these two games actually deliver at the end of the day, because, you know, I'm not just gonna go along with the trailers, but they are apparently in development. Now, moving away from realism and going a bit more fantastical, it's Judas. A disintegrating starship, a desperate escape plan, and you are the mysterious and troubled Judas. Your only hope for survival is to make or break alliances with your worst enemies. Will you work together to fix what you broke, or will you leave it all to burn? Here we have an adventure first-person shooter where you're on a starship that's falling apart and you're gonna have to save yourself by working with your enemies. Now, this one, narrative is a big deal, so the story and the characters you interact with is kind of the point, and they are pushing that this narrative FPS is developed by Ghost Story Games, a studio led by Ken Levine, director of System Shock 2, BioShock, and BioShock Infinite. So if you played those games, then you can kind of guess which way this is going. Visually and character-wise, there seems to be a lot of uniqueness here. It basically does feel like a combination of System Shock and BioShock. I mean, it looks like a Shock game, but it's called Judas. And it does seem very cool, very interesting. A unique take, but no particular release window at the time of recording, and also not a lot of details revealed. Trailer looks cool though. Going a bit more prehistoric, we have Ferocious. Fight, explore, survive. Ferocious is a first-person shooter that combines a sense of wonder of exploring a mysterious prehistoric island with over-the-top action gameplay. Basically, guns and dinosaurs. And, well, that's always a nice combo, I guess. You are shipwrecked in the Pacific Ocean, and you awaken on the shores of a deadly island. You're one of the few survivors, and you must navigate these encounters with dinosaurs in a dynamic and interactive world teeming with life and ripe for exploration. Now, it does say that you can study, fight, or befriend both prehistoric and fantastical creatures. So this isn't just dinosaurs, it's a bit of fantasy, but also you don't have to kill everything you see, or you can, I guess, because you will have a wide arsenal of customizable weapons. And you know, I think if you're a fan of dinosaurs, or I don't know, if you hate dinosaurs, this game could be for you. They only just showed off their first gameplay trailer though, and we don't have a lot of other details besides that, and the trailer is short. Looks cool, but we'll see how Ferocious continues over the next year. Now, taking a shot at survival horror, it's Pneumata. The tenants are going missing. Screams echo and blood seeps through the walls of Clover Hill. You play a detective, and you have to unravel the truth that lays within and recover your fragmented memories. Or you could succumb to the horrors that lurk in the shadows. In this game that's combining some survival and psychological horror elements with the first-person shooting. You'll be scavenging for weapons and supplies, examining crime scenes and piecing together clues, exploring a realistic and gritty apartment building, and discovering hidden areas and pathways. The enemies are supposed to be controlled by a diverse AI, which can be unpredictable. And it does have to be said that there is gruesome horror in this game. So if you are looking for a new shooter horror kind of experience, then Pneumata seems to be delivering what you're looking for. But, you know, personally, I'm not too much into the horror genre. I do appreciate the aesthetic, it's just I don't want to have any more nightmares. So I'm gonna move on from this one, but you can check out Pneumata. In a more fun approach to the first-person shooter, we've got The Finals. This one is centered around the world-famous, free-to-play, combat-centered game show. You fight alongside your teammates in virtual arenas that you can alter, exploit, and even destroy. You build your own playstyle in this first-person shooter to win escalating tournaments and lasting fame. The world is watching you in this FPS game show aesthetic, where you play your own way, where you could sneak up on enemy squads with a katana in hand, or you can just blow up entire buildings to leave your mark. Destructible environments, buildings, walls, all of that is your weapon and enemy, because of course it can be used against you as well. And as you fight through these arena-based matches, you gain fame and fans, so you can craft your unique avatar and get more customization options as you get more famous. So generally, The Finals looks like a fun, good time, though it is already sort of focusing on it being free to play and also cosmetics, so I would expect microtransactions and all of that, so just keep that in mind, as that's likely going to be the monetization method of this game. But the destructible environments does seem like, well, so far, seems like you can do quite a bit with it, and that could be enough to set this game apart. No specific release window at the moment, but if you're intrigued, keep an eye on The Finals. And then to get stealthy, I.G.I Origins. This is a 1980s Cold War setting, which balances precariously on the brink of full-scale conflict. Your job is to infiltrate a volatile and manipulative world of high-stakes espionage in your own way. You plan and execute your mission against enemies, plotting all-out nuclear war in this tactical first-person shooter. This is a prequel to 2000's Project I.G.I, and you are Michael King, codenamed Regent, an ex-SAS soldier recruited by MI6 for covert global missions, and you're basically trying to stop a world war. Now, with all the fast-paced running and gunning and corridor shooters on this list, perhaps taking a slower pace is more your style, and I.G.I Origins can deliver that, as it is sneaky, it is stealthy, and a bit more precise with what you're shooting at. But at the moment, not too many details are revealed, so we'll see how I.G.I Origins sneaks its way into 2024. Now, I should tell you, the moon's haunted. In Moon Mystery, This is a game where you have to figure out what happened on the moon. You unravel its mysteries and uncover why we really raced to land on its surface in 1969. You fill up on oxygen, load up your guns, and set out on a celestial FPS investigation that starts on the moon and leads you across the universe. This game sounds crazy, but it is a first-person shooter, and it just takes you to space and beyond, and that, I mean, I don't know, the way they've set this one up just sounds exciting. I wasn't expecting to feel that excited reading about this, but, you know, it sounds pretty exciting. You'll be facing puzzles and platforming through the environment, and there will be also malfunctioning robots stalking the corridors, and other more terrifying and mysterious foes. And through all of this, you do have to keep your oxygen levels up, otherwise you'll suffocate, and, you know, manage your ammunition. Don't waste it all. You're in space. Moon Mystery sounds really cool just for the setting alone. I don't know if it's gonna be a good game, but it's a good idea. And it's set to release in 2024, so we should be seeing more of this moving forward in the near future. Alright, this is a first-person shooter list. I of course have to mention Call of Duty, and the latest one is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. And no, it's not the 2011 Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. This is a new Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. It has the exact same title. This is the sequel to Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, but it is not the sequel to Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Don't be confused. I'm not confused. Everyone understands how this naming system works. It's Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Everyone knows this one. It's a AAA shooter, and Call of Duty has a release, pretty much every year. And now they're remaking the ones from about 10 years ago, but with the exact same name. And, you know, I don't have to explain this game too much, because I think all of you know what Call of Duty is. So I'm just mentioning it to make sure you don't say you forgot Call of Duty. Here it is. And yes, it will be coming with a zombie mode, which I think is quite popular, so you can check this out. But I think if you're a fan of Call of Duty, then you already know about Call of Duty. Moving on, it's Killing Floor 3. It's 2091, and the megacorp Horizon has produced the ultimate army, an obedient horde of bioengineered monsters called Zeds. Now you join the rebel group Nightfall in this co-op action horror FPS that puts you and your teammates in a battle for the future of humanity. I mean, this is Killing Floor by Tripwire Interactive. Killing Floor 2 from 2016 was a massive success. I mean, people love this series, and all this game has to do is be as good as the last one, but maybe a little bit better? Or maybe just be as good as the last one and people will love it, right? This one is gory, it is violent, it is going to have a lot of action and violence, and I do think a lot of people are hyped for this one, and I don't think Tripwire really misses all that much, so it's probably a safe bet to expect this one to be a success as well. Now, Killing Floor 3 was just announced at the time of recording, so we don't really know too many details or when it'll be releasing, but I can't expect it to be that much further than 2024, so keep your peepers peeled for Killing Floor 3, if you're looking forward to the gore anyway. Next up, we've got Stalker 2 Heart of Chornobyl. Discover the vast Chornobyl exclusion zone full of dangerous enemies, deadly anomalies, and powerful artifacts. Unveil your own epic story as you make your way to the heart of Chornobyl. Make your choices wisely, as they will determine your fate in the end. Now, this is the sequel to Stalker Shadow of Chornobyl, which was a massive success, very popular, but it was a long time ago, so there's huge hype for this one. And I think people have been waiting for it for such a long time, and the wait is almost over. It is set for a Q1 2024 release, so not too long from now. And it's promising an epic, non-linear story in a seamless open world, a variety of enemies and hundreds of weapon combinations, legendary mutants and monsters with different behavior models, and is a blend of FPS, horror, and immersive sim, with what seems to be a new kind of life simulating system. They're calling it A-Life 2.0, which is supposed to make the world feel alive like never before, in a dynamic day-night cycle and realistic world. So that sounds really cool. Like, I'm actually most interested in that. But, I mean, overall the game looks really good so far. Mod support as well is going to be a thing, so mod support is always nice to see because it's not just about, oh, if you don't like something about the game, then it can be modded, but also it does just increase the longevity of games. And just as a note, there will be multiplayer mode, but it'll be added after release as a free update. So on launch, there's not supposed to be multiplayer mode, but multiplayer will be coming to Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl a little later on down the line. It's just, we've been waiting for this one for a long time. I mean, even on the Steam page, they're showing off awards for this game in 2021 as games to watch, and it's been a couple years and it's still not quite here. I mean, hopefully they finally stick to Q1 2024 and you'll all be able to get your hands on Stalker 2. Now, for another game that's already a massive success in early access, Marauders. This is a tactical first-person multiplayer looter shooter set in a sci-fi universe. As a space pirate, you work solo or in a squad with up to 3 other players to navigate a hostile battleground. You hunt for loot, craft new weapons and gear, and you salvage what you need to survive. Now, when I say this is a success, I mean it's succeeded already. There's over 11,000 Steam reviews, and it's mostly positive, at about the 75% positive rating. So generally, people are loving this, and a lot of people are playing it, I think is the main point. It's been in early access since the end of 2022, so it's about a year at this point, and their plan was to be in early access for 12 to 18 months. So I would expect this game to fully release sometime early in 2024, but you know, because it's already seemingly liked and well developed, I mean, you could just jump in now. I mean, like I ask sometimes, what does early access even mean at this point? Early access doesn't really mean anything, but I'm gonna list this anyway as an upcoming game still. Marauders is a gritty diesel punk world with raiding, looting, and escaping, tactical first-person combat, persistent gear and XP, an upgradable spaceship, and explosive sci-fi dogfights. So there's a lot here to check out. And if you haven't heard of Marauders and it seems intriguing, go have a closer look. Now, over the last year or so, we've had a bit of a revival of Starship Troopers, and then there was a first-person shooter that released into early access called Starship Troopers Extermination. This is a 16-player co-op FPS that puts you on the far-off front lines of an all-out battle against the bugs. You squad up, grab your rifle, and do your part as an elite deep space vanguard trooper set to take back planets claimed by the arachnid threat. And this game is another one that entered early access and just blew up. There's over 20,000 Steam user reviews at 91% positive. 9 out of 10 players who played this game like it. Now, Starship Troopers Extermination is promising a pulse-pounding, base-building, objective-grabbing, co-op first-person shooter, and pretty much I think what everyone kinda wanted from a Starship Troopers game. There's been a lot of Starship Troopers games over the years. Usually they're either RTS or tactics, squad-based, top-down kind of stuff, but you know, a first-person shooter just puts you in the claws of the bugs, right there, face first, and I think that's what a lot of Starship Troopers fans were looking for. And it turns out, this game turned out to be a good game, so if you'd like to know more, well, there's plenty of information on this one, go check it out. It has been in early access since about mid-2023, and they're looking to fully release by about mid-2024. Now, remember those Bodycam realistic shooters that we saw earlier? I just want to make another note here of another one that we've seen pretty much nothing of. It's called Lost Fragment, and it's got another ultra realistic trailer with seemingly VR first-person shooter kind of gameplay, but this one is more dark, creepy, so although it's realistic looking, I think it is more of a maybe survival horror game. But like those other 2 games, I just want to say that I'm not 100% convinced by just the trailer, and I don't know why there's now 3 games that look like this. Maybe they will turn out good, they might turn out interesting, but again, with Lost Fragment, I will treat it like the other two, that I will wait until the game releases before I really judge it for anything. Otherwise, at the moment, it's just a trailer. Moving on from that, it's ExeKiller, a retro-futuristic Western game with a storyline set in a post-apocalyptic alternate timeline. This is a first-person action-adventure shooter with character progression and varied story choices. As a sci-fi Western shooter, this one does look pretty cool. I like the car, and it's promising a semi-open hub environment with lots of freedom, a unique setting with interesting visuals, a linear narrative with non-linear choices, dialogue that matters, a choose-your-own playstyle, and character progression, where it's not about XP or leveling up, but it's about choice of mods and augments, the tech implemented in your weapons and stuff like that. So it's not so much your character is leveling up, but it is your stuff is getting better, and I guess your body is also part of your stuff. Overall, this one does look very promising. It's got an interesting setting, but they have straight up said that the planned full release date is 2025, though I expect we will see more of this going through 2024, possibly a demo, possibly just more gameplay and information. So for now, ExeKiller is one to watch. If you've been wanting a new MechWarrior game, well, good news! MechWarrior 5 Clans. This one follows a star of Clan Smoke Jaguar warriors during Operation Revival, a full-scale invasion of the Inner Sphere. Armed with an arsenal of cutting-edge battle mechs, meticulously designed maps, and missions deliver immersive and intricate tactical gameplay and a combat experience. That is the promise of this new MechWarrior game. At the time of recording, this is a more recent reveal, so we haven't really seen all that much, mainly just a mostly cinematic trailer, if nothing else, and some nice-looking screenshots, but, you know, until more's shown off, there's really not too much worth just guessing anything. But if you are a mech fan, then this will be the first-person shooter for you. I mean, in recent news, apparently Titanfall 2's multiplayer came back online as well, if you're wanting to jump back into that one. But as far as I know, as of right now, Titanfall 3 is still not in production anymore. So MechWarrior 5 Clans might be the next game for you mech fans. And then we have Marathon. A massive ghost ship hangs in low orbit over a lost colony on Tau Ceti 4. The 30,000 souls who call this place home have disappeared without a trace. Strange signals hint at mysterious artifacts, long dormant AI, and troves of untold riches. You are a runner, venturing into the unknown in a fight for fame and infamy. Now, said to be from the creators of Halo and Destiny, this is a sci-fi PvP extraction shooter where you compete for survival, riches, and renown in a world of evolving, persistent zones, and any run could lead to greatness or just death. This is one that seems to have a lot of backing to it, and it does seem like it could be very, very cool. It is from Bungie, so, you know, this is their next big first-person shooter. You know, generally I think Bungie knows what they're doing. We just haven't seen too much of Marathon yet, but we should find out more over the next year. And I think, I mean, if Bungie does what Bungie does, it's just gonna be another massively popular shooter. So, Marathon. We can keep our eye on this one. Okay, this part of the list, we are basically just having glimpses at some future FPSs. This next one is called Concord, and it's supposed to be launching in 2024. This is a new PvP multiplayer first-person shooter, but I'm not going to talk too much about this one because they have not talked about too much of this one or shown off much of it either. There is a trailer, but it's a cinematic trailer and it's a spaceship. And it's going through hyperspace, and it looks really cool. And there is a burger. I mean, that's really all we've seen. We've basically seen nothing. There's burgers and guns and spaceships, and that's what Concord is about, apparently. So, there's not much to say here. But it is supposed to release in 2024, so I guess they're just going to reveal more closer to its actual release, or it could be delayed into 2025. But I have to mention it because it's an upcoming first-person shooter for 2024. And then, I have to mention this, even though we've seen nothing. Crysis 4. That's right, if you haven't heard, Crysis 4 was actually confirmed in 2022, that they are working on it. It's now approaching 2 years since that point, so it's a good chance that we will at least see more of the next Crysis game in 2024. Like, what you're seeing on screen is all they've really revealed, a cinematic trailer of stuff moving about, and there's not really much else to say besides Crysis 4 working title is in development. So it's coming back. People have been waiting for it for a couple years, and I have to imagine that they wouldn't announce it more than 2 years before they reveal something. But, you know, maybe we just hear nothing in 2024. But, you know, I should let you know that if you're looking for another first-person shooter, Crysis 4 is in the works. As a bonus, I'm going to mention Counter-Strike 2, which is not a 2024 game. It already released, and I'm gonna talk about it because, well, it's the biggest first-person shooter in the world, and probably maybe one of the biggest games in the world, as it consistently tops Steam's most played games. And let's face it, if I don't mention Counter-Strike 2, you're all gonna come for me. So if you haven't already heard, some of the features of Counter-Strike 2 are: there's a new CS rating with visible measurement to your Counter-Strike performance. There's responsive smoke, where bullets and explosions will actually affect smoke from smoke grenades, because they're now dynamic volumetric objects that interact with the environment. And lighting. Tick rate is now a thing of the past, so things should be more responsive and more accurate, and cleaner, brighter, and better maps. And it's free to play, so if you want to jump into Counter-Strike 2, go ahead. And we can expect this game to basically be a pillar of gaming for at least the next decade. There you have it. Press the like button and use the GOG referral link below to support videos like this one. Thank you to all the patrons and YouTube members who really support this channel and keeping videos like this being made. If you want to stay in the know for another genre, go to the next list video linked on the screen, as I'm sure shooter fans like yourself would not want to miss all the action, adventure, and tactical games in the other lists. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you there.